Perhaps. So what have I been kind of suggesting to me? I don't know if to you I've been suggesting that, but in my mind, what I've been suggesting is two things. One is the idea of awakened consciousness. So the way I've talked about that is you know that you know. When people ask me, what do you know? It's not about the object. It's about the mind being awake to the way things are. And I've referenced that in various ways. Um, Now is the knowing, Benyang Niang. It's like this. You know that you know. So that's not a qualitative experience like good or bad, just knowing what the experience is like. So it's not about the object. And then the other is the idea of the open heart. So welcoming, openness, and one of the words around that would be acceptance. So let's say, let's say I was betrayed by someone uh, 5 years ago, say, and then when that memory of betrayal comes up, triggered by events and circumstances, then I feel the betrayal, and then I think, oh, it was unfair. And then I think, oh, I think I must forgive. And then I practice metta bhavana and I send metta bhavana to this person. May you be well, may you be well. That's not acceptance. That's still ego. I am someone who was hurt and I am sad, but I will forgive. So there's still what we call Sakaya Ditti in that. And which is okay, you know, that's a okay way to go. But I don't think you really resolve the energy of that contraction. To me, when there's acceptance, it's a knowing of both the sense of I and the memory as being actually one drama or one thing. When I think to myself, this is in awareness, then there's a kind of knowing of the totality of that experience. There is both the anger or the sadness of betrayal, but there's also, you see, the sense of I comes together. They're, they're really one thing. And to perceive that in that way, this is in awareness, and not just move away from it, but to perceive it, then the knot of that, the energy tightness of that, the contraction of that will dissolve into open, clear light, open awareness. Why I say that is because quite often we identify things as I have a problem. I have a fear problem, I have an anger problem, I have a cough drop problem, or whatever you want. And then we proceed in very good manner, in very noble fashion, to be the person who will now solve that problem. But you're still in the Sakaya Ditti realm, you're still in the self realm. And although it's better to forgive than to hate, I think true resolution and liberation from that is the understanding that this is sankhara, compounded things arising in awareness. So to say I have an anger problem, you could say that, and that might be helpful, but you could also say that anger, memory, sense of self arises in awareness. That's a different way of looking at it. Mm-hmm. Because if you keep perceiving yourself as this person that has an anger problem, you might think that acceptance is a kind of resignation. Oh yeah, I have an anger problem. Yeah, I'll always be this way. I'm going to have to really work on it. Maybe next lifetime I'll get through my anger problem. That's still Sakkaya That's not really acceptance. And in the way I like to use that word, or open-heartedness. So it's not like psychological resignation. It's getting outside of that through awareness and then allowing that perception just to blossom, just whatever it is, to come into consciousness. And then it's released. Because the ignorance that's invested in it, the sense of I that's invested in it, is no longer believed in. So observe, like, I got like that memory I said of me not hugging my mother. That's a really strong memory. It's interesting. And that was 1977 because it was such a strong emotional thing for me. I felt an emotional air. So when it comes up, there's also a sense of me being this person who made a mistake. But that's all one piece. It's not like there's a memory and there's a me. There's two things. It's actually one thing. It's one drama. And when it's witnessed in awareness, it arises and then it disperses into silence. So if you think that like the challenges of relationship and the family and all of that complicated stuff of being a human being, if there's something persistently producing suffering, please observe, are you identifying with that as I have a problem of being whatever you're defining yourself as being, or are you just seeing this whole thing as in awareness, as an objective drama in awareness? That to me is what the end of Sakkaya, but also that's where the knot of that self-identity it vanishes because you have the right perspective. You have the perspective of true acceptance rather than just an identity, me. So Sakkaya is, as I said earlier on, that's the fundamental understanding of getting into the stream of Dhamma. So even though you have a good intention to be a better person and have more loving relationships or be more diligent or whatever you define yourself in whatever way, if it's still from self-definition, you might become a better personality, but you'll never get beyond the sense of personality. There was always this me who is inadequate or not quite right, or there's always a you that is also you're never quite right, and you're never in it, you're never quite on. So when I create the other, I also create myself. Not to say that criticism is wrong. If I'm in the monastery and one of the monks is, which isn't the case, but if say a samanera is acting in a way which is inappropriate, it's my job to offer him reflection. So critical faculty is fine, but the sense of self, which is created through criticism, through fear, through idealism. So, say if you take idealism, how that works, you have a notion that you will be kind to your partner, kind to your kids, that you will meditate every morning, and that your diet will be really correct, and da 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 da. So you have this kind of idealized image with the perfect Buddhist mother, father, brother, whatever it is. And then that idealized notion is challenged by reality. You have a nervous system, you have the flu, you're exhausted, you're tired, and then you react in some kind of a way which is inappropriate, and then your idealized notion then makes a critique. Oh, you shouldn't do that. You shouldn't act like that. You should be a better person. But I was tired. I don't care. But I was exhausted. Doesn't matter. You're bad, wrong. So that all that thinking is sakayaditi, self-thinking. Acceptance, I would say, is this kind of opening to the totality of that drama, the idealism, the commentary around the ideal, whatever is going on. And the language I find most helpful is that drama is in awareness. How do you get to that larger, spacious, conscious knowing that is not a sense of self? It's not a person trying to become better. You like a lot of the, in North America, maybe Thailand too, a lot of so-called spirituality is self-help books about how you can be a better person. You can be more productive or whatever you want. But that's still creating a sense of a me and a mine. Might become more productive, but will that really be freedom? Is that really freedom? Or is freedom something which is not about personality? Personality is something that arises with thought, with emotion. Let's say a young person falls in love with another person and they think, this is it. Beautiful, beautiful. This is perfect. So personality arises of, yes, this is going to work. This is going to be wonderful. And then that same person then goes to work and the boss is Donald Trump or some narcissist of that ilk. I shouldn't have said that. But, really oppressive and nasty piece of business who's now the boss. Well, now the personality arises in a different way, doesn't it? Now the personality is fearful or angry and then back to the loved one, another kind of personality arises. And this kind of, so personality depends on causes and conditions. It's dependently originated. It's paticca samuppada. With this as condition, with that memory as condition, this sense of ego self arises. With this other kind of memory and condition, so success, if you, like on a retreat, someone will say to me that some instruction was effective, I feel happy. And if someone says, I, I don't know what the hell you're talking about, actually, then I feel doubt. Huh? And that's okay. But if I then identify with that doubt, oh, maybe I'm not doing this right, or maybe I should do something else a little bit, and then identify with the compliment, oh yeah, I'm better than sliced bread. I'm really cool. That's ego. That's the sense of self, and that different sense of self arises. So we want in relative truth, yes, there is a sense of I. And I have responsibilities, and I am a bhikkhu, and I have a passport, and there is a 78-year-old body, etc. That's true. But what we're discovering also that there is something which is not that. And that's where the true piece of spiritual practice lies. So without dismissing as I always say, the necessity for conventional relative truth and integrity in terms of dana, sila, responsibility. Without dismissing that, there is another kind of dimension to look at that. And so I like the language of this is in awareness, this feeling of having hurt someone is in awareness. Then I don't create this idea that I have a having hurt problem, but I do have to take responsibility for that. Because if I don't, then it'll just repeat itself and my attention will always be drawn to that. So one of the ways I think about that, I don't own it in a sense as it's nature, but I am responsible for it. Otherwise it just repeats itself. So then you start to look at the patterns of suffering in your mind as patterns that arise and cease in awareness. And then these knots, energy knots or psychological knots, they begin to relax and open out because you're no longer caught in that dynamic, a me and the memory. Think about a memory which is painful. Memory comes up, and then a sense of self comes up with it. And then if you're always just trying to struggle with that, you're still in the struggle. You're still that memory and identifying with that memory. But when you step outside of it and say, this is in awareness, that this is an object, like sound is in awareness, body is in awareness, emotional constructs and dramas are in awareness, then you have the perspective where the tension, you're no longer involved in attention, and attention has a chance to relax. So kind of do look at your, like these self-identity things that I am a person that has a problem or um, whatever it might be, and try to come to a perspective of being responsible, but finding that knowing, which is really no longer identifying with the problem, if you see what I mean. If you don't see what I mean, well, that's the way it is. That's all right too. You can get away with anything with this teacher. But I think it is important because we are good people. And we're doing this work, and we don't want to hurt. And we want to affect the world in a kind and generous way. And we do for the most part. But there's bits and pieces which are just the nature of conditioned emotions and historical things with family and that. And idealism is it's a kind of dangerous. Well, if it's an attachment, it's very dangerous. You can have an ideal of trying to be a better person, but we're not trying to become a better person. That's the curious. We're not trying to become a worse person either. It's not about being a person. It's identifying as awareness itself. And then within that, the best of personhood does arise, like several of the interviewees. Is that what we call you? The interviewees? Is that correct English? Terrible, isn't it? Yogis. There you go. I just reporting that the natural, when the mind isn't preoccupied with thoughts and memories and all of that, the natural response of uh, the being is some aspect of love, because the whole ego is out of the way. I had a dream. I dreamt I was sitting in a Japanese style, with like that, sort of just with my legs down somehow, folded up, knees nice and up. And I woke up, I said, I don't need an operation. Not true. Go Hawk. You thought I was going to be Martin Luther, right? I had no Martin Luther King. I had a dream. Anyway, do look at that whole area of self-judgment and idealism, and the whole sense of self is something that arises and ceases in awareness. Then you will resolve those things because you won't be adding to the fears and whatever or aversions that exist. They come and they go, but they do disperse if you don't feel them. Our our true nature. I think I'm very optimistic about the human condition, but not about civilization. Well, civilization, I don't know. Is it civilized at all? But the human condition, when it's allowed to, uh, when it's not caught by limited views and perspectives, then its natural function seems to be love. We call it Brahmaviharas, silence, those kinds of things. And what prevents that is this preoccupation with objects, various kinds of things that we get preoccupied with. And the retreat is kind of extraordinary, not real life but it does create a foundation for that kind of deeper sense of what spirituality is about.